A Coturnix quail hatches, grows up, and is ready to breed in about 6 weeks. That's quicker than most vegetables in your garden reach harvest. It needs roughly 1 square foot of space, about the footprint of a dinner plate, and eats less than an ounce of feed a day, the weight of a handful of paper clips. A healthy hen starts laying at 6 weeks old and can produce close to 300 eggs a year, almost 1 a day, for most of her life. And she does it almost silently, quieter than a sparrow on your windowsill. Now put that next to a chicken. A laying hen needs 4 to 10 times the space. A heritage broiler takes 5 or 6 months to reach market weight. Chickens eat 3 to 4 times as much feed daily. And a rooster will wake up your entire street at 4 a.m. every single day, no exceptions. By almost every number that matters, the quail should be winning. Faster to mature, smaller footprint, better egg output relative to its size, quiet enough for a balcony, and legal in places where a backyard chicken would get you a fine. So why did the chicken, a descendant of a jumpy, aggressive jungle bird once kept mainly for fighting and sacrifice, end up as the most eaten animal protein on the planet while the quail sat on the sidelines? We slaughter more than 73 billion chickens every year. That's close to 10 birds for every human alive. Quail, meanwhile, barely register in global farming statistics. They're usually just folded into a generic other poultry category with ducks and turkeys. The answer has almost nothing to do with which bird is actually better. The quail didn't lose because it's a worse animal. It lost because of a long chain of historical accidents and economic momentum that started thousands of years ago and never stopped compounding in the chicken's favor. And the strange part? The trait that made the chicken famous originally had nothing to do with meat or eggs at all. It was aggression. Part 1. How the chicken got a 2000-year head start. Around 1500 BCE, in what's now central Thailand, the red jungle fowl was just another forest bird. Around 2 pounds, roughly pigeon-sized, scratching through leaf litter. It wasn't especially meaty, and it definitely wasn't tame. Males fought hard during mating season, using the spurs on their legs like blades. To early rice farmers, this bird was mostly a nuisance. It kept wandering out of the tree line to raid the grain. But somewhere along the way, people noticed the fighting, and they liked what they saw. For a long time, the standard story said chickens were domesticated 8,000 to 10,000 years ago in China or the Indus Valley. But a 2022 reanalysis by researchers, including Joris Peters, Gregor Larson, and Ophélie Le Brasseur, overturned that timeline. Many of the chicken bones from those old digs actually belong to wild pheasants or jungle fowl, not domestic birds at all. The real evidence points to the site of Ban Non Wat in Thailand, dated to roughly 1650. 1250 BCE, about 3,500 years ago. That's thousands of years after humans in the Middle East were already domesticating sheep, goats, and grain. What pulled the jungle fowl into human settlements wasn't food demand. It was rice paddies. The crop created a steady, easy food source that drew the birds in close, over and over, until people started catching and keeping them. But here's the twist. For roughly the next 2,000 years, nobody was really eating chickens as a staple. Early evidence across Southeast Asia, the Mediterranean, and Africa links chickens overwhelmingly to cockfighting, religious offerings, and divination, not dinner. Greek art shows roosters as fighters and sacred gifts. Romans linked the rooster to Mars, their war god. The cockfighting tradition itself is what carried the bird along trade routes, through India, Persia, Egypt, the Mediterranean, and eventually the Americas. That 2,000-year head start is a culturally important, widely traveled animal, before anyone bred it seriously for food, is enormous. By the height of the Roman Empire, chickens already existed on every inhabited continent except Australia and Antarctica, not because they were the best protein source, because they'd already spread everywhere for reasons that had nothing to do with nutrition. The quail's story ran on a completely different track. Wild common quail were eaten around the Mediterranean for millennia, but they were caught, never raised. Every autumn, huge migratory flocks crossed the Mediterranean Sea heading toward North Africa, and by the time they reached the far shore, many were so exhausted they could barely fly. They'd drop onto the beaches in exhausted clusters, and people simply threw nets over them. It wasn't hunting so much as harvesting. Quail even show up in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, representing the sound of the letter W, carved into tombs over 4,000 years old. The biblical account of quail feeding the Israelites in the wilderness almost certainly describes the same migration pattern. Pliny the Elder wrote about it in Rome like it was just an ordinary seasonal event, but nobody bothered farming them. Why would they? A free, reliable, self-delivering seasonal protein source showed up every autumn without any effort. There was no incentive to domesticate an animal that basically domesticated the coastline for you. Japan eventually took its own quail down a different path entirely. Starting around the 12th century, Japanese aristocrats began keeping quail, not for eggs or meat, but for their song. The male's trilling call was considered beautiful, and singing competitions became a genuine upper-class pastime. For roughly 800 years, quail breeding selected purely for vocal quality, not growth rate, not egg output. Meanwhile, the chicken kept spreading through traders, colonizers, and missionaries, quietly drifting toward bigger bodies, more eggs, and calmer temperaments with each generation. It wasn't until the 1910s and 20s that Japanese breeders started selecting quail for egg laying, and it took the food shortages of World War II to really accelerate commercial quail farming. But by 1945, chickens had already had a 3,000-year global head start with farming infrastructure, barns, feed systems, processing tools, recipes, built entirely around them. Part 2. The economics that sealed it. Even ignoring history completely, the chicken probably still wins on pure economics. And it comes down to one brutal fact: size at slaughter. A market-ready quail weighs 180 to 300 grams, about half a pound, roughly a baseball. A market-ready broiler chicken weighs 5.5 to 6.5 pounds, about the size of a house cat. You'd need 8 to 12 quail to match the meat from a single chicken. That sounds manageable until you think about processing. Every bird, regardless of size, goes through the same basic steps: capture, transport, stunning, bleeding, scalding, defeathering, evisceration, inspection, chilling, packaging. Smaller equipment doesn't mean proportionally cheaper labor. The number of human touches per bird stays roughly the same, whether it's a quail or a chicken. Do the math. If processing a chicken costs around 20 cents and yields 6 pounds of meat, that's about 3 cents per pound. If processing a quail costs even 15 cents, being generous, since small-scale equipment tends to be less efficient, and yields a 1/4 pound of meat, that's 60 cents per pound. A 20-fold difference for the exact same product category, animal protein, and it compounds. Chickens yield 70-75% of live weight as sellable meat. Quail, with a proportionally bigger skeleton relative to their tiny bodies, yield closer to 65%. Less usable product from an already tiny bird. The chicken's dominance got permanently locked in during the mid-20th century. In 1948, the A&P grocery chain, then the largest retailer in America, launched a national breeding competition called Chicken of Tomorrow, offering cash prizes for the fastest-growing, meatiest, most efficient bird. Over 3 years, breeders across 40 states submitted entries, evaluated at a USDA facility. The winning genetics became the foundation of the Cornish cross, today's standard industrial broiler. A modern Cornish cross hits about 6 pounds in 42 days, roughly the same time it takes a quail to reach its full adult weight of half a pound. Same time frame, 12 times the mass. The quail's famous speed advantage basically disappears once you account for scale. Feed efficiency tells the same story. Modern broilers convert feed to body weight at about 1.6 to 1, meaning 1.6 pounds of feed produces 1 pound of chicken. Pork needs roughly 3 pounds of feed per pound of meat. Beef needs 6 to 8. Quail need about 2.5 to 3.5 pounds of feed per pound of meat. Worse than the modern chicken, despite quail's reputation for efficiency. That 1.6 ratio is one of the most important numbers in modern food production. It's why chicken breast is often cheaper than cheese. It's why fast food built empires on chicken sandwiches and nuggets. Global hatcheries now produce roughly 500 million chicks a week, enough to give every person in North America a new chick daily, while processing plants run lines at over 2 birds per second. Don Tyson took this further in the 1960s with vertical integration. One company controlling breeding stock, hatcheries, feed mills, farming contracts, processing plants, and distribution, all in-house. It was ruthlessly efficient. Adjusted for inflation, a pound of boneless chicken breast cost over $4 in 1960 and fell below $2 by the 2000s. Chicken went from an occasional Sunday treat to the default protein in cafeterias, fast food, and military rations. Now imagine trying to build that same infrastructure for quail from scratch. New incubators for 10-gram eggs instead of 60-gram ones, miniature shackles, shallower scald tanks, inspection protocols for a carcass, a tenth the usual size, cold chain logistics for half-pound packages, and an entirely new base of consumer demand. All of that competing against a system with a 70-year head start and trillions of dollars already invested. Economists call this path dependency. Once a system locks around a standard, switching becomes too expensive, even if the alternative is objectively better. It's the same logic behind the QWERTY keyboard, designed in the 1870s to stop mechanical typewriter arms from jamming. A problem that hasn't existed for decades, yet the layout persists because retraining billions of people costs more than the benefit of switching. The chicken is agriculture's QWERTY, not the best bird for the job, just the one that got there first and built the infrastructure around itself. Part 3, where the quail actually wins. While the West built its chicken machine, quail found real success elsewhere, in markets where it didn't try to compete with chicken on chicken's terms. Japan produces over 2 billion quail eggs a year, enough for roughly 16 per household annually. You'll find them in bento boxes, ramen bowls, sushi, and skewers from Osaka to Sapporo. Not a novelty, but an expected item on the shelf. China goes even further, producing an estimated 20 billion quail eggs a year, more than 2 per person, making it the world's largest quail egg producer. They show up in hot pot, night market skewers, and clay pot rice across the country. The Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam run smaller, family-scale quail egg industries rather than the giant vertically integrated operations that define Western chicken farming. In France, quail sits at the opposite end of the market entirely, a luxury item. Whole roasted quail with herbs over lentils, quail eggs in aspic, quail breast plated with truffle shavings. Production is tiny, but the price per pound reflects its status. A single quail dish at a Michelin restaurant can cost more than a whole rotisserie chicken back home. The pattern is clear. Every place quail actually succeeds. It succeeds by being something the chicken isn't. A distinct bite-sized product with a different texture, or a luxury item where cost doesn't matter. Nobody who tried to sell quail as cheap bulk protein succeeded. It only works when it stops trying to be a small chicken. Part 4. The biology that makes scaling up hard. There's also a real biological obstacle that rarely gets discussed. Quail can still fly. Modern chickens basically can't. 70 years of breeding turned the Cornish cross into a heavy, ground-bound animal that stays where you put it, which, commercially, is enormously valuable. It's easy to contain, move, and process fast. Quail retained their flight instincts, including a startle reflex called flushing. When spooked, they launch straight upward with explosive force. In a crowded commercial barn, one loud noise can trigger hundreds of birds to rocket into the ceiling simultaneously, injuring or killing themselves. This is a real, documented cause of production loss, and it requires specialized low-ceiling housing and strict noise control. Quail are also more stress-reactive than chickens overall. Lighting changes, noise, unfamiliar handlers, transport vibration, all of it can suppress egg laying, slow growth, weaken immunity, and trigger feather pecking or cannibalism under crowding. Chickens, after decades of selection for tolerating loud, bright, crowded industrial conditions, are comparatively unbothered by all of it. The chicken has been bred into confinement. The quail, biologically, is still mostly wild. And industrial agriculture isn't a place wild animals adapt to easily. Part 5. A quiet comeback. Still, there's a growing case for the quail. Not as a chicken replacement at industrial scale, but as something suited to a completely different kind of food system. Rising grocery prices, pandemic-era supply shocks, and general distrust of industrial agriculture have pushed the modern homesteading movement toward Coturnix quail as the ideal starter livestock. Online communities increasingly recommend it to people without the land, zoning, or budget for chickens. The math backs this up. 50 quail, fitting comfortably in 2 cages about the size of a small bookshelf, can produce 40 to 45 eggs a day, plenty for a family of 4 with extra to spare. They reach butchering size in 6 to 8 weeks, allowing a continuous rolling harvest. The whole setup runs quiet enough for an apartment, cheap enough that daily feed costs stay under $1, and clean enough to manage with basic care. For someone in a small apartment where backyard chickens are banned, quail actually work. A 2019 study from Ankara University, published in Poultry Science, found that small-scale quail farming generates less waste per gram of protein than equivalent chicken operations outside industrial settings. And because quail cycle through generations so much faster, 8 to 10 reproductive cycles in the time chickens complete 3 or 4, genetic improvement could happen far quicker if serious investment ever arrived. The biological potential is there. The funding and infrastructure simply aren't. And that's really the uncomfortable core of this whole story. The quail isn't losing because it's biologically worse. Chefs widely consider its meat richer tasting than chicken. It isn't losing because consumers rejected it. Most people in the Western world have simply never had the chance to buy it at a price competitive with chicken. It's losing because the global food system isn't built to find the best product. It's built to scale whatever product got there first. Changing that means rebuilding the entire machine, and that machine currently processes 73 billion chickens a year across a supply chain worth trillions of dollars. This same pattern shows up everywhere in human history. The best technology doesn't usually win. The first technology to reach critical mass wins, and then that scale itself becomes the wall nothing else can climb over. VHS beat the technically superior Betamax. Gasoline engines beat electric motors that existed just as early. QWERTY beat faster keyboard layouts. And the chicken beat a smaller, quieter, arguably tastier bird. Not through merit, but through timing. The quail's story isn't really about a bird that failed. It's a case study in how entire civilizations get locked into choices that were never fully choices to begin with. A chain of coincidences stretching from rice paddies in ancient Thailand, to aristocrats breeding birds for their singing voice in medieval Japan, to a grocery chain's breeding contest in 1948, all cascading into a world where one bird feeds billions, and the other lives quietly in a cage in someone's spare room. The real question isn't why we don't eat more quail. It's how many other systems we rely on. Energy, transportation, even the way we build cities, are running purely on momentum, on something that simply arrived first and never had to prove it was the best. And whether, as resources get tighter, the cost of staying locked in is finally starting to outweigh the cost of asking a different question. Because the quail is still out there. 6 weeks to maturity, 1 square foot of space, nearly an egg a day, waiting for a food system that might, eventually, be willing to ask if there was ever a better option all along.